Hi everyone, welcome to our 38th video session here at Impaction. What we do at Impaction is make the social impact space more accessible. When it comes to video sessions in particular, we interview social entrepreneurs, we talk about ideas, and we even help solve challenges for real-world social entrepreneurs around the world. Today we are joined by Farah from Lagatos. But before we start with her introduction, we're going to introduce ourselves in 2 sentences or less so you see who is on the call today. So I'm Shivani, one of the co-founders of Impaction, based in Chicago, Illinois. Lacey, do you want to go next?
Hello, I'm Lacey. I'm based in Southern West Virginia, and I help Impaction with their social media.
Great. Bethany, do you want to go?
Sure, I'm Bethany. I'm based in DC. I work as a budget analyst and in the evaluation at M&E space.
Awesome. Syed, do you want to go?
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes.
This is Syed Saudulasan from Pakistan, and I'm serving as the vice chairman of the SAMS Pakistan. It is basically a training and consultation firm.
Great, thank you. Shorjo, do you want
Pakistan.
Hi, I'm Shorjo. I'm based in Gujarat, India, and I'm in the ports and logistics space and trying to make it more for drivers to have a better livelihood here.
Like I said, today we're going to be helping Farah solve 2 challenges. She's the founder of Lagatos and the new winner of this year's social innovation competition. Lagatos aims to provide daily access to the internet for digitally divided communities. Its solution is to create internet routers that do not need an outlet, just a mobile phone that's operated by individuals to gain access to the internet. So Farah, I will let you take it away with the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the introduction. So as already mentioned, I'm Farah Brunache, the founder of Lagatos. And before I go into our solution, I wanted to talk about the problem. And so the problem is that it's 2020 and there are people who still cannot go on Amazon to do something as simple as buy toilet paper while their neighbors 1 house down can. And so who are these individuals? So take, for example, my grandmother. So this is a picture of me and my grandmother in 2006. And there's something I specifically noticed while at her house. There's no electricity, there's no refrigerator, but everyone has mobile phones. And the way that they would charge the mobile phones is that my cousin would jerry-rig a gas generator to the house. And then for 2 hours per day, he would tell everyone, okay, you have 2 hours to charge your phone. Everyone run to an outlet and charge, and then spend the rest of the day trying to connect to the internet. And what's important to note that this is not just my grandmother's problem. There are 7 billion people in the world, and approximately half, 4 billion, do not have daily internet access. But of these same individuals, over 75% have mobile phones. So for example, like Teofil and Renee in 2019, when I visited Haiti, and they're actually one of the first 2 users who joined our platform. And so our solution is to have internet routers that don't need outlets, just mobile phones, and they're operated by individuals. So an individual who has a mobile phone can attach our product to the back of their phone, and they can use the phone to essentially charge the router. And once it's at 100%, they can disconnect it. So it doesn't have to remain attached to the phone. But the goal is that as individuals walk around, it broadcasts public Wi-Fi for individuals to use. And so it's more of like a community effort in order to sustain infrastructure. And our business model operates in the sense that the individual who has the router gets compensated as individuals pay into the network for daily internet access. And I wanted to provide a simple analogy to what we're doing. Lagatos sees ourselves as kind of a zip file for internet connectivity, where we store the zip file in the computer/router that's attached to people's phones. And individuals are essentially getting compensated for helping us sustain the network. And so what we're doing now is that we have a platform. We have about 22, or actually now 23 users. 16 are active, and then we have additional daily active users. And we're currently measuring productivity and wages. However, at this time, we're looking to, based on feedback, to focus or narrow down our impact metric and more so transition to job creation.
Thank you, Farah. Short and sweet. That's great. So I know we have a couple of challenges that you need help solving. So, Farah, can you speak to the first challenge a little bit about what you're looking for from this community?
Yes, absolutely. So, what we're doing now is we measure productivity and wages. I think the reason why we chose that initially to as our impact metric is because it's really something that we can easily kind of track from a quantitative perspective. So, as individuals use the product, right, it works that people outright buy the hardware device and then it's theirs 100%, they own it, right? And as they keep it powered, essentially they get micro payments for keeping it up and alive. So it's very easy for us to track, what was their increase in terms of user and product, how much did they earn? But at the same time, since our platform allows individuals to essentially connect to the internet, we could also measure. Anonymously, like what type of sites are they going to? We could easily collect data in terms of are these individuals, for example, graphic designers or aspiring software engineers, and so we were able to kind of trace that to essentially, was their productivity increase? Can they get online more often? Could they get, for example, maybe gig jobs? But as speaking with Impaction, when we're talking about social impact, job creation is like the biggest thing that you can measure. And so I'm trying to understand how I can possibly be able to track the multiples of that, especially since our product really is focused on, or a part of it is on privacy and being allowing individuals to connect anonymously to our devices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think the challenge in particular with measuring your social impact, um, I mean, there are endless amount of things that one can do when you're connected to the internet versus when you aren't connected to the internet. So it seems like job creation may be one route that you want to take, but there are other opportunities that you can ultimately track when it comes to accessibility, just in general. So my one of my team members and I were speaking about a specific social impact metric that actually comes before job creation as a result of getting internet access. We were speaking a little bit more related to just education and skills building as a result of getting access to the internet, specifically because the upskill market is really hot right now, especially with people working virtually. And I mean, not only during this time, but just in general, I think that this will show like a different mindset moving forward, even after this is over. But when it comes to upskilling, just in general, I mean, there are a lot of companies like Linda that work specifically on technical expertise. Um, and this can ultimately be more geared towards your metrics on, how many people are being forwarded to these other organizations, how many people are gaining more skills and what types of skills are they gaining as a result of access to the internet that makes them more attractive as being, like as being job applicants for some of these larger organizations. So I think moving directly to job creation, um, in my opinion, may not be the most feasible option, but creating more of a market towards accessibility can be.
That makes sense. And in terms of like our platform, it that does make sense in terms of that's something that we could easily track. Like that could be like the next step
Mm-hmm.
in terms of access and probably even in terms of partnerships as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it goes into the second point already, but there are a lot of like LinkedIn learning courses and, like I said, Linda and Coursera, and I think there's like Udemy or something. Like those are all educational based platforms, and their incentive to partnering with you would be huge because you're giving them access to a whole new network of individuals that previously weren't connected to the internet. And if it's your community and they're using your product, they would be more likely to partner with you. So yeah, it can be a huge opportunity for you to grow and even circulate that way.
Right.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts or anything?
Yeah, I just want to jump off what you were saying because I was thinking the same thing. Obviously, like the potential impact of this is huge. So as someone who spent 2 years living in West Africa, I was just like, yes to everything you were saying. Like everyone has a cell phone, but like no one has consistent internet. So it's a huge problem. So I think like in terms of measuring the outcome of job creation, like that is definitely like the long-term goal. And like I think the steps to getting there are like that's like they can be a clear path to getting there, but thinking about some of those like smaller, more like input and output based things first makes sense. So bouncing off what Shivani said in terms of connections with education resources, like that's huge, especially since there's so many free education and skills resources right now. But you could also think about like in addition to like skills, um, thinking about maybe creating like an impact, um like I don't know how much you know about impact measurement theory in general, but kind of creating, so I can send you some resources if you want, but it just
Okay.
helps you think about kind of your path. So there's like a variety of little categories and you can get as specific or be like really vague with it, but essentially you think first about like the system change you're looking to create, which you have that established, and then you think about your outcomes you want, which for you like the bigger thing is job creation right now. So then you kind of like backtrack from there and think of like some of the smaller, more measurable things you can start with in order to get you to that bigger thing, which is like job creation, which is like a little bit harder to obtain and like measure. So I have like I can send you some really good YouTube videos which help you kind of work through that. But I think even like you said, privacy is kind of a concern because you want like keeping people's data private is like essential to this being like a long-term resource. But you could also think about even just to gather some preliminary data about like how people are using this new resource. Like you could do a little bit of surveying with just some basic questions, which is like, how often are you accessing this resource, to kind of match that up with like some qualitative data with your quantitative data, and just like what they're most likely to use it for, because obviously people are still going to like access social media, which is beneficial for them as well. But like you could kind of gather some preliminary data to like bounce, like have a little bit more of a human story to go with some of those numbers that you're having as well. So yeah, I'm very excited about this as an idea. I think it's great. Props to you for coming up with like the technology to actually make it happen. Like this is huge. And I think you can get to that like job creation measurement standpoint. You just have to maybe think in some smaller steps first.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, as like an early stage startup, if you can speak more to that resource that you mentioned, does it help with milestone planning? Because job creation, as you mentioned, is like a big thing. So when it comes to a company and they're trying to, because for us, we're now expanding our team, so I have to do like product road mapping. It can't all be in my head, and I have to map it out for individuals.
Right.
And so, how does that kind of play into that? Because it's not something that obviously gets solved in 1 year. So.
Right. So there are like a few different aspects to it in terms of like short-term and long-term planning. But I think so what you can do, like the resource I really like, so it's a theories of change. It's from the organization SOPACT, SOPACT. They have like a YouTube channel and like all kinds of free resources, which I can definitely send, but just in case people watching the video want to access it as well. So you can start with some really small things, because this resource is mostly for like social sector enterprises that don't have a lot of money to invest in impact, or measuring impact, which is like so important, but also like not necessarily something people have resources to invest in. So it really goes about like thinking about how you can do this with what you already have first. And then once you kind of establish your plan, if you have more resources to dedicate in the future, then how you can kind of like build on top of this foundation. So I think as you're planning for like the short term and the long term, you'll be able to implement this without it being too heavy of a lift right off the bat. And then as you start to gather a little bit of this data, you can kind of expand into like different measurements that will continue to be beneficial, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers your question. I know
It does.
it's a little vague right now, but
It does. Thank you.
So this is Shorja. So this reminds me of an interesting case. Like I was just remembering. We had this problem in India 4 years ago, where access to internet was a big issue, and now the thing is with data. Actually, the access to internet I think is taken over without any routers. Like I personally don't even have any broadband routers, anything. I use pure data. There's an interesting case if you look up. You heard of a company called Reliance Geo? Have you heard of it?
No.
So Reliance is a very, very, very large Indian company that actually brought down the internet rates significantly in India to the cheapest in the world, to a cost of 6 cents per gigabyte.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So they individually by themselves solved this problem in the country by just pumping in data and using data, pure data in phones to solve the internet problem. So it's a large company, so there will be a lot of differences. But as a whole, what their whole strategy was in bringing this out and making access possible to all the citizens of the country is a good case study to look at in terms of metric and sort of scaling, in terms of just building it. Because it was a completely new division when they built it out. And the thing is that they gave free internet for 6 months to the whole country. So in retrospect, pretty much every other company went sort of bankrupt when they were giving internet. But
Yeah.
it did bring internet to the masses through pure data by they started giving 2 gigs a day. That was their model. And that was enough to get access to internet in a way. So if you Google Reliance Geo internet case, you'll see it's a global case study at how to bring access to the internet to the masses at scale as a whole.
Okay, that's good to know. Yes, because one of the things which I didn't mention, because I didn't want to go into too much of the technical weeds, is that we do have a content delivery network. So that's kind of how we're able to provide kind of like high bandwidth access, which is essentially storing the data in the quote unquote zip file inside the router. Yeah.
That means Geo will be the best, like the most closely aligned case study for you.
It will.
'Cause
Yeah.
Scale,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Of the success
Definitely, at
scaling.
scale, definitely, yeah. Because they don't. It's not. I mean, their router it's not attached to the phone. It's separate from the phone, but it's like in terms of that, like it's pretty much very similar to what you're doing, but in India.
Exactly. That you can have a
Perfect.
hub or you can have the SIM in your phone directly. So you can just use your phone as a hotspot
I
everywhere.
didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Ah. And you said Geo, yes?
Yeah, JIO.
JIO. Okay. Thank you.
So, I mean, when it comes to, I mean, social impact metrics just in general, so you were talking, I mean, Bethany was telling you a little bit about like these specific inputs and like that can go into your outcome. What led into your initial thinking about job creation? Why was that the first type of social impact metric that you thought about when it comes to tracking this?
So a lot of times when people, so we're not at the moment a telecom company, but usually when people think of telecom, they usually do think of what is kind of um, the ripple effects, right? Or even just in general, what is the ripple effect that internet has? And even when I look at Haiti, the market that we're launched in now, compared to, for example, other countries who had internet access the same amount of time period, and how Haiti still lags, or other countries still lag in getting the same. In terms of access to opportunity. And so a lot of times people do think about possibly like the network effect, but also the multiplier when internet is available. And even when I look at like my personal story, so for me, I'm actually I have my bachelor's in sociology, and I minored in photography. And what happened was the final year of of college, I kind of inadvertently, I don't know how it happened, but I did some miscalculations where I finished my major and my electives, but didn't have enough credits to graduate. I think it was probably because I took like summer courses and stuff. But either way, uh, so my advisor was like, "Listen, just take this year and have fun. Take a minor in something that you really like." So I actually wanted to open up my own art gallery, but I was told no. I need to get like a like go for like something real, and so. I was already kind of into computers, but I didn't have, I was one of those individuals who didn't have a computer for a long time at home. And so the only exposure I had was at school. And to be honest, it did slow my prospects in terms of like education and opportunity. So this time, they didn't have a major or minor specifically in photography. You had to take a mixture of stuff. So then I did graphic design. And then all of a sudden, I started doing web development. And then I got a call from a recruiter. And so that completely changed like the trajectory of my career just by having more access to it and exposure. And so that's kind of why I started thinking of job creation because, to be honest, I doubled my salary within 1 year just because I switched to software engineering, right? As a junior developer, which is huge. And so that's why I think about job creation because of my personal story and looking at how both these communities technically have internet service. Everyone has a mobile phone, but the amount of service that you actually have dramatically impacts how your career prospects. I know that was a kind of a long answer, but hopefully I answered the question.
No, yeah, definitely. And it seems like you're specifically talking about something technology based. Um, I mean, you made that transition that way and you were able to, double your salary because the market was speaking that way. And it speaks to a little bit about what our another entrepreneur in our network, Kennedy from Africa, what he's doing is trying to give opportunities to developers specifically in Africa to know that there's talented like freelancing developers in Africa that are looking for positions. So I think you guys can like meet about that just a little bit about how he measures his impact and whatnot. And I'm sure he would be happy to like guide you through a little bit about what they do as well.
Okay.
But yeah, that gives a little bit more of like an overview on what you're doing. That makes sense. Do you want to explain the second challenge around partnerships?
Yeah. So we launched in February, and we do see ourselves as like B2C. But now that we have some individuals using our platform, we did want to try to explore the best way to form partnerships because we realize that we can't do it alone. This is a big problem to tackle, and looking at what are the best avenues. Someone mentioned possibly universities, but I'm not currently in school, so I'm trying to understand if that is really a viable option or what other types of ways I can approach this. This because one part could be trying to form like more of like corporate partnerships or enterprise type of partnerships, or it could be more of like we're more of a platform, like going back to the data thing, where if people are really accessing a lot of Udemy, maybe it's more of like figuring out the partnership with Udemy, um, if that makes sense. And Udemy is just an example, but it could be like any learning platform. And it could also be like what type of metrics maybe would people be interested in also seeing
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like usage, because maybe it could also be that maybe I need to take a step back and get additional users on the platform, get more data around what I need. Maybe it's also instead of thinking of jumping right into a partnership, maybe it's more of like a case study that I can do as a pilot with someone that can then be used to um, fuel additional like strategic partnerships as well. Because one of the things too is like there's grant funding, right, that I would want to apply to. So how am I getting the data for that? Improving that this is really solving a problem for people. So I threw a whole bunch of stuff there, but looking to see what is like a good viable path. Yeah.
One question in technical terms for when you are trying to think of internet wherever you are, who is your technical partner?
So right now I'm the one who coded everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is no other technical partner, right? That's
Yeah,
right now.
that is correct. Yeah.
So where is your infrastructure? What infrastructure are you using right now in terms of cloud and in terms of that? How is it right now set up?
Yeah, so I'm actually using both AWS and DigitalOcean to host
Okay.
different parts of the technical stack.
Okay. So you're just using that right now as a partner.
Correct. Yeah. And so I was able to, as a, like an early stage startup, I was able to get credits, and so on both platforms. So that has assisted. Yeah.
So then, are you paying AWS right now, or are you still at the free period?
So some of the services I'm using is actually not in the free period, which is really unfortunate. And so that's a lot of where my burn comes on a monthly basis. And so I think it's about maybe 10 only, actually maybe 10 to 20% is actually covered under the free tier.
So is there any way we can partner with AWS or Microsoft Azure? That'll be, I think, your first level. So because that'll be a huge cost.
Ah, yes, that is correct.
That'll be a
That
massive
right
cost
now, that's
deal.
my major cost right now.
As
Yeah.
as a social enterprise, then I think that would be the first level of partnerships I would look for if I were you.
Ah, okay.
Because if you look at what a lot of these companies, like what I'll again use the Geo example. Geo has massive data center needs. So what they did is they partnered with Microsoft Azure to build data centers domestically in India. So it's a win-win for both in that way. So Microsoft Azure gets more of a whole of the domestic base, as well as they also have cheaper ways to source their data needs. So as
Ah.
it's larger, but as a whole, since you're a social enterprise, that would be something that I would look into. If they will at least fund you or extend your free period, because you're doing good for the community. Before,
Okay.
otherwise, then you can cover your fixed costs, and your fixed costs will be huge otherwise.
Yeah. That's a good idea. And I do have a contact I can reach out to, so I should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you need any contact, I can also reach out because we're a large company where I work for, so we have a pretty good relationship with Azure and AWS also. So if you need me to reach out, us to reach out to something, also let me know. Since you're doing social development, we can also help you out if you wanted that.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. The more people I contact, the better. So I will definitely reach out to you. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
But for this Shorjo, would you advise that she, have like a more of an idea of what her social impact metrics look like before moving into these partnerships? Or
Yes. I think
yeah, right.
I think that's critical. I think you have to really show you're doing a social good. In that case, your social case will be strong, because these guys will get hit by a lot of these guys too. Give free cloud infrastructure and all, and
Mm,
that's a big capex for that. So you should have clear definitions of what you're really trying to do, like skill development and job creation. Very, very clear as a whole.
okay. And Bethany, so the resources that you were going to share, would that help in kind of improving or providing a case to these data or these infrastructure companies?
Yeah, that'll definitely get you started. Once you start thinking through some of the like outputs and inputs and different things, I mean, I'm also happy to like, if you want to bounce ideas or just like, sometimes it's hard to think through the language. Like people get very like obsessed with like what indicator am I looking at and like how do I measure it? And like that's important, but that can kind of come a little bit later. I think once you start to see like the steps that you need to put in place to just like think through your path a little bit, it'll come a little bit easier to you. Like you have a good plan in your head and you know what you're trying to do. It's just like putting it on paper a little bit is where it gets like it gets a little overwhelming to like see what that like how to chart that out. But yeah, so I sent a link in the group to the SOPAC videos I was talking to you about, and they're all like pretty short. Like none of them are longer than 10 minutes, and so they go through like the whole process of how to think about your like impact measurement. And once you get some ideas, like I said, on paper, I'm happy to like talk through them with you as well. And there are quite a few people in the Impaction like group who work in this space, like in the impact space, and so I'm sure like everyone would be happy to like just kind of help you figure out what exactly you're measuring.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I think that like the link that Bethany posted is a really good start. And like even before even launching your own case study, you obviously have to have these impact metrics aligned to what your end goal is. And to do that, I was working at a nonprofit and I took this course through Acumen, and you may have heard of like the North Star Metric Workshop. And that actually helps as well. Even in the beginning stage of your company, the North Star is like a goal that um, that that you start thinking about, that you finalize, where all of your products, where all of your mission, vision, everything will be aligned to that one goal. And that North Star is something that um, you will never, like you as an organization will never achieve, but that's something that everything that you're doing is aligned to. And that will also help with your input, your output, what value you're creating, your value proposition for the community, your target market, all of that. And there's someone on my team, Tanvi. She just ran through this metric with us again. I mean, this is the first time she did it with us, but we did it in the beginning. But this is something that will also keep you like strategically moving forward, because your market is huge. It's huge. And scaling is going to happen very quick. So, I mean, getting the right people on your team, but also making sure that you're thinking in a very streamlined way will be important as well. And this can help with your case study, finding something that will strengthen your relationship and even your partnership with the context that Shorja was talking about. So, yeah, I'll share that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but there are a lot of inputs, especially in job creation. I feel like it's not as small as people think sometimes. And I think like Bethany brought up some really good points about like just making sure that you're harnessing talent in your market and the way that you're going to do that. Do you have more details that you can share about your target customer? I mean, who are the types of people that you're looking to use this specific product?
Yeah, so right now when we like our go-to-market strategy in like Haiti was to focus more so on people who can afford internet. Because in Haiti, there's kind of almost like four different classes of individuals. So we kind of went after first individuals in a specific suburb in the capital, so we can keep it kind of concentrated. And so the characteristics with them were usually individuals who are, for example, just graduated from school and are looking for work. And so while they're looking for work, they're basically trying to upskill. And then we have other individuals who are currently employed, who are graphic designers, photojournalists, aspiring software engineers, and software developers who are like gig workers. So that's kind of the target that we went after. And so people who basically need to have internet access. So beyond social media, that was the key thing. So it had to be people who weren't just doing social media. And so starting with them, that's basically like our baseline target user.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's more of like the younger market.
Correct. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of a possible case study that you're thinking of doing, or is it still in the works?
Right now, it's still in the works.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we wanted to do is just collect more data on like the usage, and figure out like who's really using it. And so we do have now 2 daily active users, because we just launched with a small cohort of individuals of like 30, just to test things out, make sure there aren't any bugs in the platform. And then we started introducing, because everything went pretty good. There were glitches, obviously, but we onboarded now another 100 people to see how that goes. And I'm thinking after these 100 individuals, seeing who, we're just trying to figure out what is the pattern between who becomes a daily active user. And then we can figure out to do a case study that kind of surrounds about what they're doing. And it looks like right now, most of the people are individuals who are either upskilling or full-time employed.
So what is your timeline looking like?
So one of the challenges we did run into is that, for example, in the Haiti market, it's primarily dominated by cash transactions and everything being like in person. And so one of the things is we already have in the works to do a pilot with a Native American community. But again, that also has to do a lot of in-person stuff. And because of the coronavirus, it doesn't make sense to obviously travel or try to convince people to do that. So we're actually now looking, we're going to launch into Africa now because mobile money is being used a lot. Because of the virus, let's focus on communities that are already using mobile money, digital money. So that way it makes it easier for people to pay into the network and keep everything circulating. So it wasn't necessarily our goal to try to expand because obviously like Africa is a big market to expand into. But I think since we were at least able to test out the technology piece of it, and that went pretty good. That at least now we're confident to try to expand into there and trying to understand what new things kind of like spring up. And so it's also why I was asking earlier about Bethany about the document, like how it helps with like strategic planning and milestones, because now our milestones have changed, and so now we're in that adjustment period. Um, but I did hire 4 new individuals, and they're all based in Africa, so they're on the ground, and so I think that will help in refining what our new milestones will be because of this pandemic.
Yeah, you can also plan kind of your impact around each milestone. So you can keep, even if things shift a little bit over time, like you can kind of keep like a few different things going at once. And even if your focus is shifting, obviously, like you have to be, especially as a technology company, you have to be like extra flexible.
I have a question. How do you fund these pilots that you're running right now?
Yes. So I've been fortunate enough to have raised a pre-seed round. And so right now that has afforded us basically the runway to basically launch the pilots. And so our runway now, we have about 6 months. But since we're have been able to launch, our goal now is to start bringing in revenue with the product.
And
Um,
how do you monetize then? What are you doing to monetize right now and bring in revenue?
Right.
Model.
So yeah, absolutely. So basically, we're kind of like a SaaS product, Netflix type of model. And so the difference with us is like, so for instance, the base rate right now is $5 a month for unlimited data, USD. And so what happens is that individuals who are like the nodes in our system, they're the ones who basically share in the profit, right? And so right now we're doing 80/20, meaning we take 20% and then 80% gets split amongst everyone who's a node in our system. Because what makes us, obviously, I haven't had a chance to look at Geo yet, but I think what would make us slightly different is that our goal is that we're not necessarily the central data center, that the people who are the nodes are actually storing pieces of the internet backhaul, right? So part of the data, and they are basically getting compensated for it in order for us to keep our network alive and the incentive to continue to use our network. So right now the base price is $5 a month. Yeah,
And that's your main revenue stream right now, right?
correct. Yeah. And so as we bring on new users, and especially now that we're going to launch in a new market or geographic region, it's really understanding like, is that what should we have to change about like the pricing or any type of like that? So that's probably like another immediate thing that we're working on as well.
And one more question is your router right now. Do you where do you ship it from? Do you ship it to each user overseas, or how do you right now handle logistics?
Yeah, so basically, right now, what we're doing is we're using basically mobile phones and converting them for the testing phase of it. So that way
Got
we
it.
can build out the specs. So we haven't manufactured any of the nodes yet. And so basically, right now, mobile phones are over-spec'd for what we need. But it's a low barrier entry for our users since they all already have mobile phones. And the other characteristic of our market is everyone has like two. So they could
Thanks.
just use one to be basically the router while they still have another one for communication. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good idea. Otherwise, your logistics can get expensive. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And fortunately, it played out well for us, being that with the pandemic, everything is like on a standstill, and so that's how we're able to still continue to operate.
Farah, I mean, you have some asks from us. Is there anywhere like we can check you out and how we can stay connected with you, and also just what are your some of the other asks that you have from us?
Well, in terms of connection, you can always email me. Our website is lagatos.com. And our email address is hello@lagatos.com. In terms of ask, I think this was really good. Definitely like the resources about milestone planning around social impact specifically. I learned about Geo, which is really good. And so learning from what they've gone through will be really good. And then to help make an informed decision on how I approach possibly like the first partnership or collaboration would be trying to go with the cloud providers. So this has been very informative. I don't have any additional ask. It definitely clarified that job creation is a really good goal, but obviously doesn't happen immediately. So figuring out and planning strategically how to reach that.
That sounds good.
I was just one thing that I wanted to kind of like clarify. So the users that you're working with who are kind of like overseeing this technology and then other users connect, that may be a good target group to work with first in terms of indicators, because they're almost like becoming a small business owner for you. And so like thinking about that as like one of your things you're already measuring, like you may want to consider, like you're already empowering them a lot by doing that, so like they may also have some ideas for you of like how to measure what different people are doing with different aspects of this technology. Like that may be a good jumping off point, because they're already like established in the community and they already like know these people that are connecting to this resource. So like thinking about that, like those folks as like a small business owner that you're developing, maybe like another way to think about measurement. Just that was just like a thought I had while you were talking. So something,
Okay.
yeah, because that's I mean, you're like basically, yeah, you're creating small business owners by doing that. So like, you know, bouncing off of that as like a future plan, that may make measurement a little bit easier too, because then they can help you count the people who are using their small business. But if your first like phase one goal is like establish X number of small business owners, that may be like a good jumping off point.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You might be making more entrepreneurs through this, definitely. Well, cool. Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and your ideas. Thank you, Farah, for your presentation. And we hope that this session was informative for everyone on the call and everyone even watching. But yeah, be sure to follow Lagatos and email Farah at hello@lagatos.com if you have any thoughts that you want to share. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Be sure to check out our new Instagram page at Humans Inspiring Impact. Be sure to check us out at www.myimpaction.com. We're actually going to be launching a new website in like 2 to 3 weeks. So we're very excited about that. Thank you, and viewers, stay tuned for more.